Welcome to the next edition of our Foundation Speaker Series. I'm Amber Goss, and today I'm excited to be able to introduce to you Samantha Johnson, Director of Aquaponic Programs for Commonwealth Charter Academy, or CCA as they're also known. AgWorks at CCA is the largest educational aquaponic facility in the country. K-12 students leverage state-of-the-art technology to grow plants using fish. This facility, located at their Capital Campus Family Center in Harrisburg, has around 3,000 plants and 400 fish growing at any given time. AgWorks is virtually hosting a wide range of activities from their lab to keep their students focused on learning career readiness skills. Welcome, Samantha. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I don't want to steal too much of your thunder, so what I'm just going to do is turn it over to you and let you tell us more about your facility and the work that AgWorks at CCA is doing.
Great. Well, again, my name is Samantha Johnson. I am the Director of AgWorks at CCA. For those of you that may not be familiar with CCA or Commonwealth Charter Academy, our mission and vision is to offer a personalized learning experience that really reaches every student across the state. And one of the reasons, the key reason actually, that we do this is we want to prepare those learners to be able to enter the workforce. And in Pennsylvania, the top 3 sectors in need of workers upon graduation are technology, medical, and agriculture. So our first build that we did as a school was AgWorks, because we really wanted to dissect the thought process that agriculture in PA is just corn and cows. And if you're not into that, then ag really isn't for you. And overall, the industry is in need of about 75,000 workers in the next 10 years. So if you're looking for a job and you're looking to enter that workforce either right away, or if you're looking to go on for some additional schooling, this is kind of your opportunity, your playground to check out what careers are tied into ag, because there are some that you wouldn't even think tie into agriculture, but also to give opportunities to students to see what they like or what they don't like. So I'm going to kind of show you around a little bit, give you a taste of what we do here at AgWorks, and also kind of touch on some of the careers that students may not realize are actually very integrated into the field of agriculture. So to start out, you're probably wondering, hey, what's with this giant tank behind me? And of course, in the introduction, they mentioned we got about 400 fish growing in here, and about, we have thousands of plants growing in here at any given time. So primarily what we do here at AgWorks is called aquaponics. And that's where we use fish and fish waste to grow a very wide variety of plants. So again, trying to get rid of that misnomer that in Pennsylvania, if you're not into corn and you're not into cows, this really isn't for you. So how does this work? Well, I'm going to break it down for you guys to a very elementary level. But I will note that there's a lot of science that goes into aquaponics. But essentially you have fish. In this case, in this tank, we use tilapia, which is an invasive species to Pennsylvania. Again, a lot of learning there. But we have tilapia. They're very resilient fish. They can survive a lot. I mention that because AgWorks is located in Harrisburg, but we also have a mobile aquaponics trailer that goes all across the state. Some of you may have seen it on the highway. We've sent it to Philly, to Erie, to Pittsburgh, Scranton. It's really gone all over the place. Williamsport, you name it, it's been there. And the fish that lives on that trailer that goes all around the state are tilapia, because again, they're really resilient. They can really take a hit, if you will. And they'll remain happy. You can play around with their pH, the nutrient level. You could go without feeding them for a few days, all of which we don't do because we are professional growers. We make the best environment for them. But if we were to do an oopsie and mess something up, they'll be able to survive and take that stress. So our fish, they eat a lot of food. So they then produce a lot of waste, which, is just a fancy science word for poop. So our fish, they produce waste. That waste product, fish don't want to continue to swim in that. So the waste that they produce actually works its way into a clarifier, which is this big tube that's partially obscured there by the tank. But we have a big tube, big cylinder there that's called a clarifier. That clarifier is where all of that solid and liquid waste goes. And what happens in that clarifier is that solid and liquid waste gets broken down. So in that cylinder, we have a mixture of bad bacteria that we don't necessarily want in our system and good bacteria. These guys break down the waste into fertilizer for our plants. And my clarifier, to be totally candid, we typically have about 70 interns working in our system at any given time, along with a ton of other types of programming. I have them memorize what all these pieces are because you need to know what the pieces are called. But inevitably, they go from calling that clarifier a clarifier to a toilet because that's where all the waste goes. It gets broken down, and we literally flush that clarifier once a week out into our beds. The reason why we let it kind of hang out in there for a week is that allows all of that solid and liquid waste to be broken down into that fertilizer. So when we flush it into the beds, no smell, no nothing. It doesn't impact the taste or anything, but it is used by the plants as a fertilizer. And it helps things like our cacao or cocoa. It helps our lemons. In the back there on strings, we have tomatoes. It helps all of these plants to grow. So once the fertilizer hits these beds, the plants remove that fertilizer from the water, which effectively cleans the water. So when that water cycles back to the fish tank, it's nice and clean, and it can start that process all over again. So involved just in the aquaponic piece, you do have a lot of science. You have photosynthesis. You can kind of tell in the back we have some very high-powered LED lights. I turned those off for you guys here today because they are pretty intense, but I'll actually turn them on for this piece. We have our LED lights. We have plants, plant pathology, entomology with insects. We have a whole ecosystem going here with our plants. Same thing with our tanks and our fish. If you're really into fish, maybe you keep them as a hobby, you can very easily scale up that understanding using API test kits. For those that use fit or have fish, you probably recognize that. But you test the pH level, the ammonia level, nitrites, nitrates, all of that you test in the water. And all of that ties into different types of careers. So knowing all about fish and knowing all about plants and marrying those two types of careers under the umbrella of ag is a lot of what we do here, but that's not all. Because I mentioned that CCA, our mission is to individualize instruction for our students. So just to save our eyes, I am gonna go ahead and turn those lights back off. But I wanted to turn them on for you guys here because some of you may be really into lights. And LED lights, there's a huge market for being able to understand that, which I will get to in just a second. But we try to individualize learning. So I had a kid start with me and said, you know, Mrs. Johnson, I love fish, fish are my thing. I hate plants. Totally fine, because the most important part of aquaponics is keeping our fish alive. So I can craft an internship for you or a job work experience for you where your main job is to make sure that my tilapia fish and the other types of fish we have in our system stay alive. I've had other students that say, I want to be a chef. That's great. So knowing where your food is sourced from, a lot of end takers, a lot of consumers really want GMO free. They don't want any pesticides in their system, in their food. This is a really organic way of growing fresh, healthy produce. And you, if you want to be a chef, you could very easily work in our lab, help us to create recipes that we can put out as a cookbook, as an example, but also be able to understand where your produce comes from. Because if you do want to be a chef, knowing that information and knowing what to pay for that produce is going to be key for you having a successful business. So there are many different tie-ins that we have here for AgWorks that really help to marry that understanding of the standards in science or math with the actual career focus of how you implement that learning and make it an actual career marketable skill. So I'm going to pause here and just kind of go over some of the things that we do offer to students. But my pause is going to be carried off here with two different things. The first one is I always like to show, and I'm going to flip my screen here really quick. I always like to show this lab because when we talk about careers, there are those that some of you just are really on the college track and you want to go to college. Maybe you don't know what you want to go to college for. Again, great opportunity for you to get your hands a little bit dirty and figure that out. But in this lab here that I'm showing you, this is called research and development. And one of the great things about this lab is if you're a student and you have a really wonky idea that you wanna try out, my job is to be a facilitator. So if you come to me and you say, hey, Mrs. Johnson, I really want to try an experiment, but I'm worried that I might harm something. I really want to maybe play around with lights and really understand how light impacts plant growth. Do you think that I could do that in research and development? Well, absolutely. Right now in here, you can see we have our lights to kind of a purplish color on the left, a white color here in the middle. And what we have, just so you guys can see it, we have a small fish tank in here as well. So that way, if you're a student and you're like, hey, you use tilapia, but I really want to try channel catfish, or let's try sturgeon or something really wild. My job isn't to say no. I know a lot of students, when they try and do internships, they try to do career explorations, they hear some no's a lot. My job is to say, let's try it out and let's see what happens. And this closed system in here, you can see it's even in a separate room. If something goes wrong, which hopefully it doesn't, but if something were to go wrong, that's in a separate system. That's not going to impact all of the other learning and all the other activities that happen in our main AgWorks lab. So that, if you're in the college track or if you just want to try to experiment with a few things, that's really the space for you to be able to do that. And what my team and I do is we help to craft that almost like an independent study in some ways, but that experience for you. So if you want to play around with lights, you want to play around with fish, you want to try to even re-plumb some of that system, because maybe there's a more effective plumbing system that we could put in place to get the water to move from one area to the other more effectively. Maybe if that's your career track, let's try it out. That's one of the areas that we can really play around. Now, this will be my, let's see how well I can move around the lab. I'm going to try and make it as smooth and as seamless for you guys as I can. But I want to show you that, again, we try to give you as many experiences as we can as students, so that way you can see what it is you like and what it is you don't really like. So this bed behind me is called a float bed, and it's literally plants that are floating in that nutrient-rich water. So let me, just in case you can't hear, I know I just missed my, let me show you here. We have all of our plants, and if I lift up one of these racks here, you can see all of those plant roots that are just laying in that nutrient-rich water. But there, again, is a lot of science that's going on in that bed. We have a lot of micro and macronutrients that impacts how well a plant grows. Understanding how to determine how much iron or magnesium or calcium is in a plant, that again is going to require a little bit of science. But luckily for students, we actually have 2 biotechnology labs here at AgWorks, which I don't have time to show you here today, but they're both state-of-the-art. They both allow you to do tissue culture analysis, genetic analysis. So if we're having issues with our plants, we can rely on our student scientists to help figure out what the problem is. We also rely on students that, maybe you want to be an electrician, or maybe you want to be that plumber, and we really need that here at AgWorks. Electrician, you can see I mentioned the LED lights. We have them everywhere in our system. So if we want to move them, for example, that means we have to move that circuitry around as well. Behind me, you'll also see we have what's called a tower garden. The one here directly in front of me, that one is empty. We just cleaned that one out. But if I kind of sneak over to the side here and peek at the one behind it, that one is full of nasturtium flowers. So in about 2 weeks, that entire tower is just going to be covered with beautiful flowers. So if you're a student and you're like, hey, I want to be a florist, I want to understand what it takes to actually assemble something that's beautiful for weddings or special events, we have the hookup for you here. We can do nasturtium flowers. If I kind of tilt up here, you can see we have these giant spheres that are attached to the ceiling. That is actually called aeroponics. We have succulents that are affixed to that ceiling. There's actually thousands of succulents in each one of those spheres. And to assemble those in a really pretty way, it takes some skill. And for us, again, we're facilitators. We would love to give students the opportunity to figure out how to do that. Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, that's all well and good. There's a lot that AgWorks has to offer. There's a lot that's going on in our system. But how do we get involved in this? Especially if you're not a CCA student. That is A-okay. We have hosted and mentored and provided job shadowing for students all across the state. If you have an interest, you have a place. Now, our facility is set up with state-of-the-art technology. So we actually have a variety of camera systems, live stream cameras. We have time-lapse cameras. We have other cameras that we just move around that don't go out to the internet right away. It goes to an SDS card. We download it, we send it to you. We have a lot of technology in here, primarily so students can participate across the state. We were set up that way prior to COVID, which oddly enough makes us a very unique facility to be able to still continue to offer this type of programming, even though students can't physically come to our building right now. We're hopeful that we'll be able to reopen for face-to-face interns. So if you are in a commutable distance to Harrisburg, we would love to work out a plan for you. But if you're not, maybe you're a teacher that's watching this for an example, and you're like, hey, we're really into hydroponics here at our school, or aquaponics. We want to maybe teach a class or attend a tour of AgWorks. All of those pieces are available, but we are very customizable. We were built on individualization, not just for students, but also community groups. So if this is something that you're like, wow, I'm a student, I really want to job shadow with a member of the AgWorks staff, you can send us an email very easily to discuss that. We're at agworks@ccaeducate.me. That is our email. So if you're a student, you're interested in that, please send us an email or send us a message. If you're a teacher and you're like, wow, I really want to do a virtual field trip here and I want to schedule some time for a tour, also reach out to us. We don't necessarily have set concrete times for that because we know community members, we're all kind of scrambling right now trying to figure out where and how we're going to do things. And for us, our most important messaging is career readiness and career skills. So we are flexible. If it works best for your school to do a tour in the morning, we can work out some days and times. If you are, a community member, maybe you're a professional chef. We've given tours to our local chef chapter actually just a few weeks ago, and that was held in the evening. We do recognize that right now flexibility is really key to making sure that we can communicate what skills you can get through AgWorks that help you figure out where your path is, what it is that you want to do, where it is that you want to be. I'll also give a plug because I know we have a lot of students and a lot of teachers attending, but just in case anybody's watching this and you're like, oh, wow, I have students, maybe you're a parent or a grandparent and you have students in elementary school or students in middle school. I want you to recognize that career planning can start as early as kindergarten, which don't freak out. The only reason why I mention that, kindergartner, they all want to be teachers and firefighters and policemen, they all want to be all over the place. But the reason I mention that is part of figuring out what it is you want to be when you grow up is figuring out what you don't like. So we try to start as early as kindergarten, and you can see we kind of have our fun campy books that we read to kids. Just to try to get them excited. Kindergartners, this is kind of my favorite book, but I do Eating the Alphabet, where you go through and you show different things that we're growing in our system. You get to learn all of your letters, associating with different colors. Trying to get students excited about this. And if you're a high school student and you're like, I want to be a teacher when I graduate, again, these are all things that we can facilitate. We can hook you up with a kindergarten, 5th grade, 4th grade class, and we can have you do activities with them. And then for our middle schoolers or even our high schoolers, again, we try to thrive on hands-on as much as we can, but we also do a lot of virtual right now. So here we have our Dino Light, where whenever we have bug infestations, this is a guy that has we have a lot of carcasses of aphids on this guy. But how do you identify when you have issues in your garden or on your farm? we can help to train you on how to identify those using something called a dyno light. Water testing, a lot of students are familiar with API test kits, which just is a very remedial way of telling you what the water chemistry is in your system. This is used in industry. This is called a Hawk meter. These meters are used, I'll give the example of York Water Company, different water treatment plants use this type because a probe just goes right into the water with a key, and then this reads out and is more accurate than some of the other test kits. But again, so I can train you guys and I can help you out, help you get a job. If you know how to use an API test kit or a Hawk meter, you are ahead of the rest of the class. You are the head of the other applicants because you already have that skill set. So again, what we strive for here is trying to build on those skills. And we do start building that again as early as kindergarten, even though I know that sounds a little bit overwhelming. But again, what is it that you like? What is it that you don't like to do? And so again, if you're a school, if you're an individual, if you're just interested in knowing a little bit more, please don't hesitate to reach out. We do try to customize and individualize as much as we can. So we do hope to have a conversation of some kind, either through email exchange or by phone, just to make sure that, again, we're setting you up with success. We're pairing you with the right mentor, you're job shadowing the right person. I know there's a lot of ground to cover that we offer here at AgWorks, but I'll even throw out there, just for glancing around, we have our own website, but we also try to put students first. So we have a green screen room here. So when you're learning how to do something in our system, it can be a little loud to shoot footage. So if you're into things like marketing, if you love YouTube and YouTube content creation, podcasting, we actually have programs that align to all of those pieces that AgWorks touches on. Because again, you might walk in here and tell me, oh, Mrs. Johnson, I'm really not into the plants at all. I'm only into the fish. That's fine. That's actually important information for me to know so I can help craft an experience that meets your needs or your class's needs. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, we're AgWorks at CCA. You can Google us or you can reach out to us directly through email or phone.
Thank you, Samantha. We appreciate you showing us the facility and taking time out of your day to show us more about AgWorks and everything you guys are doing at your facility.
No, thank you so much for having me.
If you're interested in connecting with Samantha, learning more about aquaponics, or if you have an interest in arranging a virtual field trip of AgWorks, she'd be happy to have you reach out to her as she mentioned. We will be displaying her contact information at the end of the video, or you can reach out to our offices to be connected directly with her. Thanks for watching.